So the next step from that point is that the team would take a sampling assignment from all of the English 2 students in order to calibrate our rubric. So just based on the eye test, they might just try to pick out 3 or 4 high, medium, and low assignments. And then we would look through them together, decide where they fell in the rubric. From that point, once we calibrated and we were all agreeing on what qualified as the different scores on the rubric, then each teacher would go individually and score their own students' assignments. From there, we would break students up into groups based on that rubric score. And remember, the rubric is very specific, so we know exactly what the kids need at that point, and we really want to hone in on that skill. So students were assigned to groups led by one of the English 2 teachers or myself as the instructional coach in order to provide support or the enrichment as needed. So even though you might be in Mrs. Morris's class, you might get put over into Miss Williams's class for that day because she is taking the proficient score students, and I am taking the insufficient score students. And so I would have a lesson based around what those students needed, and she would have a lesson based around what the proficient score kids needed. So then for the next assignment that would cover the standard, we would add on to the rubric based on the skill that students needed and which we're focusing. So for example, the first thing that we like to get English 2 students doing is just using some analytical language and using a little bit of text evidence, from the text, and realizing that there are words there that should show you what an author is meaning and that you might have to think about it. That's all we want for the first assignment. So the second assignment, we might focus more on word choice, or we might focus more on having students incorporate, embed quotes more naturally into their analytical language. So we would just keep adding on what our focus was and trying not to overload them. So then it really keeps our rubric very clear of what our kids need and what they're struggling on. And it also doesn't overwhelm us as teachers in how to support them in the differentiation. So I really wanted to check our work based on the feedback cycle, based on what we've been working on. And when I read this chapter, I just thought it was so perfect, and I wanted to see if our English 2 team had held up to the feedback cycle. So I started with assessment. So we assessed them with a common question, a short answer response, an analytical reading comprehension question, and then we looked at those data and the results. Based on that question, based on the rubric we came up with together, that data informed our instruction, how we broke students up, and how we created lessons for what those students needed based on that data, and even to small groups or individualized tutoring, also based on the data. Then we assessed students again, looked at the next round of results, and then changed our instruction, modified our instruction based on what we thought kids needed for the next step. So that might lead us to move on. That might lead us to keep a group that still needs help, and we might put them with one teacher. We might just need for everybody to go back and try the skill again with a different piece and a different question. So we do look at that data to inform where we went next. So I was very pleased to see that we're on the right track, and I think there's a lot more that we need to do and that we could do to make the rubrics more specific and stronger based on what I read in this chapter. But I was excited to see that we are kind of dipping our toe a little bit in the world of formative assessments. Thank you so much for being a part of my presentation. I appreciate all of you, and I appreciate your feedback in advance.